We are here in our crocodile enclosure. This is going to be home for these guys throughout the winter, coming into summer. What happened was about a year ago, we got a call by a member of the public who said that somebody had harvested these crocodile eggs. There were 23 in total from the wild. Unfortunately, what happens with reptile eggs is when they are harvested and turned, if they're not put back in the correct position, the embryo inside the actual egg dies. So when we did get the 23 eggs, we put them in our incubator. We tried to candle them to make sure they were in the right position. But also another thing with the harvesting of eggs, so in the wild, what will happen is when the eggs are ready to hatch, the babies will start calling to the mother, and as she uncovers the eggs, they'll bump together and it kind of cues for the babies to start hatching. So 3 of the babies did actually hatch. Unfortunately, all of them were premature. 1 didn't make it within the first 24 hours. But these 2 little guys, we managed to get through that early stages. And yeah, they're going into their nice enclosure now with a nice big pond. They're graduating from their neonate enclosure to a nice big pond this side. We've got a water heater in there. I tested the water. It's about 23 degrees Celsius. They've got a hot spot over here, which is sitting at about 30 degrees. So they can climb out and bask if they'd like to. And they can cool down if they need to go into the shade. And they've got a nice little pond which will keep a regular temperature throughout the period while they're here. So there are a few more items we will be placing in here with them. But let's get these little guys into their pond. So we'll have them, in nature. What will happen is the mother will actually look after the young ones for about a year or so, where she'll protect them. And in the wild, they've only got about a 1% survival rate. So if we had to release these guys without any protection, and only being 2 of them, the chances are that none of them would have made it. So we'll keep them with us until they're about 1.5 meters, at which stage they can fend for themselves. And we do have a release site in Zululand where they'll be going. So they'll be with us for about another 6 months or so. So being apex predators, it's actually very important that we disassociate with the animals as much as possible. I've literally only held these animals 5 times in the last year, as in when I had to clean or move them from enclosure to enclosure. So we try to, obviously being apex predators, we don't want them to associate people with food. And so when feeding as well, I always make sure that it's disassociated with myself. So it's only myself who's able to actually work with these animals to make sure that they do not get habituated at all. So I'm going to grab the first little guy and pop him in the pond. You can see this guy's actually got a little bit of a birth defect due to being premature. So he's got a little bit of an overbite there, but it hasn't caused any problems for him. And we're going to pop him into the pond here. They've got nice full bellies. They were fed on Saturday as well. They were fed some mouse fuzzies. So it's very important that these animals do get whole prey items sometimes as well with the bones inside. It's important for them to get the calcium that they need. They also need natural sunlight or UVA, UVB lights to be able to help them to synthesize that calcium into strong, healthy bones. A lot of people don't realize that about reptiles. There are certain reptiles that don't need direct sunlight or UVA, UVB. Other reptiles do need it, and they can't synthesize the calcium in their diets without that direct light. So, for example, tortoises, they can develop bad shells, very weak shells. They also get what we call tent syndrome, where the shell scutes actually start popping out a bit. With other animals, such as certain lizards, they get very fragile bones, which then lead to bigger problems later in life. So these guys have been getting UVA, UVB lighting. Now that they're moving into an enclosure that's part outdoors, they'll be getting direct sunlight. And 1 hour of direct sunlight is actually equivalent to about 8 hours underneath that light. So it's really good that we're moving them out into an open environment now. Okay, let's see if we can get this little feisty guy out without getting zapped. There we go. Okay. You can see he's giving a bit of a threat there. As I say, I've tried not to handle these as much as possible. So we'll move him into the pond to try give as little stress as possible. They also open their mouth like that when they're thermoregulating, but that was basically a threat that he was giving me there. Well, you can see he's feeling a little bit timid in a new environment. That's why he's hiding under the water like that. Once he settles down, you'll see he'll rise to the top. So crocodiles are amazing at holding their breath. They can spend up to around about 2 hours underwater. I know, for example, a python, which you wouldn't think would actually spend so much time in the water, they do, and they can hold their breath for around 20 minutes underwater. So croc's capacity is slightly longer, but also depending on age and size as well. So these little guys, this is absolutely an amazing feeling. They were released in here a couple of weeks ago, but unfortunately we had a problem with the pond leaking, and so we repaired the pond, and it's just awesome to see them going into the new enclosure. The next step is the best part, which will be the release, and I can't wait for that. All right, so they've been so well behaved. I'm going to treat them with a little bit of chicken gizzards that I've chopped up here. That one obviously being a little bit more intimidated right now with the move and everything. He might not come up and eat, but we'll try it anyway. So I'll put a few pieces of meat on the plank here. See if we can get them to come through and eat.